Hey now, it's Dan Eberhard here, today's host of the Growing the Future podcast. We're back with Season 4, Episode 3. Please sign up for our newsletter, growingthefuturepodcast.ca. And the purpose of that, you can get emails about all of our new episodes. You can catch all the back episodes there. Check us out on the social media platforms. That'll keep you in tune with what's happening. And also our YouTube channel. You can see everyone as well as hear them on our YouTube channel. So check that out. Please check out the Eberhard family of companies online. Starting with aberhardfarms.com. You can learn more about our farming operation in Saskatchewan. Suregrowth.ca. You can learn more about the precision agronomy consulting services offered there. Convergencegrowth.com, where we accelerate solutions across food, health, and agriculture. And last but not least, of course, aberhardagsolutions.ca, where we deliver one-of-a-kind fertility solutions of the future to your farm. Our next guest is the Business Incubator Manager at Cultivator, powered by Conexus. That's kind of a lengthy name tag, but this is really, really cool sounding. He's a co-founder of Big Idea Camp. He was formerly a high school business teacher. I love that we're teaching business in school. We did not back in the early 90s. So this is obviously some sort of progress in mankind. Right now, you can find him accelerating Canada's top early stage ag tech companies, some of whom we featured on this show, and we have been fortunate enough to be working with, for example, Precision AI and Lucent Biosciences. So there's a lot of connections here. There's only like 1.5 degrees of separation in our network here. This individual has a serious passion for helping entrepreneurs of all ages and stages, and believes creating community is the most rewarding thing that you can do. Today, I'm going to talk to him about his journey from high school teacher to Business Accelerator, what the Business Accelerator actually does for startups, which is a whole host of things. It's quite comprehensive. And what, for me, where I really want to get to is what are some of the universal learnings that this individual has gleaned from observing all of these, the high volume of companies going through this accelerator, the good, the bad, and the ugly. In the startup world, I'm sure we can get a clinic on how to go about starting up. You can find this individual on Twitter, LinkedIn, bigideacamp.ca or cultivator.ca. Welcome to the show, Jordan McFarlen.
Dan, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. And big fan of the podcast. So honored to be on the other side talking, not just listening here. So hopefully I can deliver as well as the guests I've been listening to.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yes, you're in good company. And it's funny because I feel like all roads sort of lead here for a lot of what we talk about on the podcast. And I feel like this is also a really cool launching pad for, our relationship and working with the startup a bit. And it's all very closely intertwined. So my first big pressing question that I had when I met you was, it's fascinating to me that you actually started out as a high school teacher. Caveat that you were a high school business teacher. But we don't think of high school teachers as, incredibly entrepreneurial. They're working with a certain curriculum. But how do you go from high school teacher to business incubator manager?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's I'd say to be where we are, like working with a ton of tech companies and doing what we are, at this stage, a non-traditional path for sure. So I can kind of share the journey a little bit, but I got into teaching and now to tech startups. Starting as a high school teacher, as you mentioned, teachers into tech startups is a little bit of a rare thing. And then, further business teachers, that's even more of a rare breed out there. So it's kind of the few and the proud. But started as a high school teacher, teaching business education, and really wanted to focus on how we could make learning a little bit more experiential and practical. So the big goal when I was in education was just how could we break down the walls between, the business and industry to help the students learn. So what we did was really look at what are the top business schools from across Canada and other places doing, and how do we emulate more of that? So, what's going on at the Ivy School of Business out in Ontario, or our local, business schools here in Saskatchewan at the Hill School of Business, Edward School of Business, etc. So we took a bunch of cool ideas and, we infused like case studies. So the students got to act like they were the CEO or the VP of marketing and make that decision. And then also work with a lot of real companies. So we tried to get out of the classroom as much as possible, field trips, I think when most people think back to school, field trips are one of the most, fun parts of school. So we tried to do that as much as we could. And we were fortunate to treat the program a little bit like a sports team. So you think about the high school volleyball or football or basketball team, you're traveling to different provinces and you're competing. So we did the same thing, but, with kind of an entrepreneurial business focus. So we'd go out to Calgary to, compete against some of the private schools out there with case competitions. And we were this, kind of small public school from out in Saskatchewan there. We do the same thing out into Toronto and other places. And the more we learned from these different places, the more we were able to change and adapt our curriculum, what we offered. And then the students went on to just achieve such great success. So they would go into engineering or computer science or into trades or whatever it was. But more and more of them started to get into working with tech companies. And then, they'd bring that knowledge back and kind of help us and say like, hey, Mr. McFarlen, this is what you got to teach. There's some really cool stuff going on. I'm working with this company out of, New York or Toronto, and we're just fascinated by what's going on. So that really led, us to and me to being able to learn a little bit more about that area and get to where I am now. But I think when I think back to my education career as a teacher, there's really like two key, milestones or monumental kind of experiences that triggered for me. And one of them, I owe a huge thanks to Todd Klink. He's the chief marketing officer at FCC. And he reached out during my career and just said, hey, we think we got an opportunity to do a case study. We want to attract more talent into the ag industry, especially young people. We're worried about the supply of individuals and the amount of jobs that are going to be, required and opportunities. And we feel like people maybe aren't aware of all the innovation and excitement in this space. So we built out a case study for our students here locally. They got to, check out things at Richardson Pioneer, chat with the Murad Al-Khatibs, and, go out to the South Country Equipments and the retailers and, and hear from just a bunch of really, really smart people. And then we turned that actually into a case study that Ag in the Classroom was using to deliver across Canada. So I don't know if it's still offered right now, but it was an agribiz case study designed at how do you attract more talent into ag and keep people excited about all the ag career opportunities. So that really got me, a little bit of insight into now where we are with ag tech. And then further, I was down in San Francisco for a family wedding, and Jordan Bosch, the founder of Seven Shifts, a Saskatchewan high growth tech company that's serving restaurants across the world, made an introduction to Adam Draper, who's leading a technology accelerator down there. And, he lied and said I was a university professor in entrepreneurship, which I was a high school teacher, but he agreed to meet with me for a 15-minute coffee. And that turned into like a 2.5-hour talk on the importance of youth entrepreneurship, instilling that entrepreneurial mindset, and what we could do at the high school level that would further spur innovation. So that's a long-winded answer of how I got to where I am today. Yeah.
A couple things come to mind, but I guess first of all, I'm just wondering if, I didn't start into entrepreneurship till close to my 40s, but I wonder what is the difference between people that are at that stage of the game that you're working with, youth, versus someone who's older and the clay is kind of baked. I mean, is there elasticity to their brains that allows for infinite opportunities versus people that get a little bit older and only certain things can be imagined? Or what do you think the difference is between somebody that pursues entrepreneurship at 20 versus 40 is?
Yeah, that's a great question. We see it a lot, working, here at Cultivator. I think there's an assumption that every founder of a tech company, whether it's general business to business software as a service or an ag tech play, is that it's inherently somebody who's young, doesn't have kids, doesn't have a mortgage, and can just be eating ramen all day and can afford to fail. But we kind of see the opposite. So what we found the sweet spot to be is really it's individuals who have industry experience. So it's individuals who have typically, some of the most successful founders we've worked with. Obviously, it's huge if you've been able to do it before. So, typically people in their 40s, 50s, and beyond. If they've had a kick at the can already, whether successful or not, that's always super helpful because they've got that experience. And then the other piece is just knowing the industry or the problem really well. So we see individuals who've, maybe worked in an industry, they got about 10 years of experience, 7 years experience, whatever that is. They found a really big problem worth solving. They know the customer, right? They know how painful it is because they've experienced it. They just now need to build the solution that can capture that market and and solve the problem. So oftentimes that, that founder that's scratching their own itch, but that itch grows over time. So I think that, the experienced founder is very successful. So I think, it's age is not a discriminator. And I think people have a misconception of it all being, young, fresh grads, but it's varied for sure.
Well, there's hope for people at any stage of the game. I think if you have, like you say, a big enough problem you want to solve, you think about Jason McNamee and Dan McCann, the two examples we referenced earlier. They're very similar to me in age and experience in the industry, I guess. And Dan McCann specifically has a great beard, much like myself. But,
that's true, very true.
Yeah. But both fun guys to work with, but I think it's fantastic. You're helping young people experience that there's at least an option out there besides just go to school and get a job, because that's not, the picture isn't typically painted back when I went to school. But give our listener a scope, like you referenced. Hey, we have amazing things going on in ag. We need people. Saskatchewan's a hotbed for innovation. Really, the economy is on fire. The agriculture economy has been doing amazing, and the list of innovative things you guys are supporting here is crazy. Give us an idea of the scope of this agriculture like sandbox you guys are playing in.
Yeah, totally. So we started things out when I was brought on to Conexus to build out this technology incubator and what's become Cultivator. We started two things at the start, and that was the Tech Incubator as well as a venture capital fund. So my partner in crime and colleague, Sean O'Connor, leads the venture capital fund, and both of those started off industry agnostic. So we knew there was a huge opportunity in ag, especially on the Canadian prairies, but we just didn't know yet if there was enough ag tech to be really focused on that thesis. So pretty organically, we built out our advisory council. We had individuals like, Kyle Folk. He started, Intergrain, known for BinSense, exited that. Dustin Coupal built Gas Buddy, also an active farmer. So we kind of cut our chops learning those pieces, and all the time knowing, and I would also say the name Cultivator wasn't selected by accident either. We felt like that had a nice little tie-in as well.
Play on words there.
Yeah. So we knew we were planting the seed, and so we did some events and things, and then we felt like, as we kind of approached 2.5 years of doing it, we were like, okay, we learned some things. We know how to work with high growth tech companies. Like, let's really dive into the industry. And we just felt like there was really a need to establish a bit more of that, global ag tech hub. There's amazing things that have happened in ag in Canada, both on the prairies and across the country. And we just know it's so strong. It's so well represented, and it's right there. So we took a stab at building out our Ag Tech Accelerator program, as well as an ag tech venture capital fund. So we felt like we wanted to provide programming to founders, but also the funding. And it just, the timing was right with the amount of innovation happening in industry and individuals starting companies, and as well as just, that whether it be like what government was looking to do or what industry was looking to do, and I think just also the inherent innovative mindset of farmers. If you think about entrepreneurial people, it's just, there's not many more entrepreneurial minds out there than those that are out there doing it themselves. So we just felt like all the ingredients were there and the recipe looked pretty good. So we decided to jump in and launch a Canada-wide Ag Tech Accelerator. It's based in the prairies, but we're excited to be serving people from all across Canada, and we'll kick off in about a month's time here. So that's kind of the ag focus there.
Yeah, for sure. So who are the stakeholders at the table, and what are their respective positions relative to what you're doing?
Yeah, great question. So Conexus Credit Union is really the, kind of the brains behind the foundation of what we've been doing. So our CEO here, Eric Dillon, very visionary guy, and had a a great mindset to go where no credit union has gone before, which is super unique to build a technology.
I've seen that. I've watched him. Yeah, he's an impressive dude.
He's just as impressive behind the scenes as well. Cool. And so the ability to invest in technology incubator, further the ability to build out an ag tech venture capital fund. But the first thing I'd start with is the fund is really built with a lot of major producers, farmers, retailers, et cetera. So a lot of industry capital is invested in it to ensure that it's not, just a Bay Street play that's trying to put some money into into ag tech, but it's really built on like potential users, customers, people who have the problems or identify the problems. You've got agribusinesses, like the Viterras, Mosaics, etc., in that fund as well as credit unions from across Canada that are in various agriculture communities, whether that be Manitoba, Saskatchewan, BC, Ontario, etc. And then in terms of the accelerator itself, we brought together Cultivator to bring the programming. We brought together EMERTECH, the venture capital fund, to bring the capital. And then we also partnered with Economic Development Regina, who was looking to spur just some regional support and an industry connection here locally, given that this was kind of the host site. Again, we're not, we're serving across the country, but that brought things together. And then really strong appetite as well from the provincial government. Innovation Saskatchewan was really, really active on the ag tech front. We're able to partner with them. They've been a major contributor. Prairies Can as well. And then the major post-secondaries, so far we've got the major Saskatchewan post-secondaries, U of R, U of S, Sask Poly, but excited to partner with many more across the country. And then some international folks started to knock on our door once we announced, and we've been able to line up a partnership with Innovate UK. So now we'll have 10 Canadian companies per cohort, maybe 11. We never want to say no to good ideas, and we'll always have 5 UK companies. So they'll actually be, coming over, travel dependent. So it makes it a little bit more international. And then the big thing is going to be the involvement of farmers, ranchers, retailers, and others. And so that's a big focus for us as well.
We need someone to cry bullshit. And obviously the first ones are
we definitely need that.
Yeah. Well, and ultimately it's the farmers using it. So you go back to the old strategic coach wisdom of, constantly ask the check writer. And it seems like there's lots of companies that fall so in love with their idea, they forget to ask the people that are going to be buying it at the end of the day. And it can be a fatal mistake. I mean, you can go right off a cliff with that fatal mistake. Now, what areas is the accelerator and the VC fund focused on in agriculture specifically, and where are you finding hotspots in terms of development?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think, and just further to that last point too, Dan, like the talking to industry is huge, and I think that's what we want to make sure we built is that we want, and we have a little Million Acres project I can mention a bit too, but we want to make sure that it's farmers and founders finding the way, not just founders of companies pushing things into the industry. So that's,
Right.
that's going to be a huge piece. And I think the BS meter is awesome. We did some beta testing here and we had people shooting down ideas and it was awesome. It was just seeing the passion of, we had Terry out actually, which was great. And Sherilyn Nagel and Dan Cugnut and some others. It was just a really good, just really good to make sure founders in the industry are well connected along the way. But, sorry, I got off track there.
No, I like that, and that's a good response. I should have, and I love that BS tester.
Yeah.
Brackets beta.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice. No, that's good.
Yeah.
So we were talking about, I guess, like I was looking at where you guys are focused on technology solutions, and we had like a laundry list here in front of me. And I just sort of wondered where you're finding hot spots or what all the areas that you were supporting in this endeavor.
Totally. So the biggest thing is that a pretty broad stroke is the intersection of the farm and technology, which obviously is very, that's pretty vast, and it's, various things, I think, kind of along the way there as well. Some of the big things, precision agriculture, really big, animal health, is a focus area within the thesis as well. Probably didn't forecast that there'd be as much innovation going on there as there is. I think when we looked at the applications for Cohort 1, there was a lot more livestock and other plays than we had anticipated. So, I think that we're trying to keep a fairly broad stroke here with our first year into it, just to see as well what's out there and where can we specifically add unique value and make sure that we have mentors and industry folks that are lined up to really support that. So the precision agriculture piece, obviously a big one. We have some stuff that gets a little bit more into the sort of, bioscience-y area. A lot of software, hardware plays across the board, but what we see specific to ag tech is, inevitably in comparison to other technology companies, the thesis is built around more money and more time. An individual building a software company for, say, like the construction industry or direct to consumer, they can inevitably typically, build a not so great MVP. It can miss the mark in a few different spots. They can pivot, rebuild, and iterate a lot more. We've just found the expectations in ag, and just given the number of growing seasons in an individual's life, whether it be 30, 40, that, they don't want to risk a massive, miss or failure at a large scale. So we knew that projects need to be better funded and need to have a little bit more time on the lead up. So how you would invest in and support, software in the parking industry or, other places that we support in ag, we need to make sure that we do it very specific to that. So that's, a little bit of the component. But in terms of companies, seen a really interesting mix there across the board, and with some really cool technology. So obviously, mentioning previous guests like Dan McCann and what the IntelliCulture team's doing, they're at Ontario and stuff too. There's just lots of innovation. So we're excited to kind of unveil the cohort here in the next month. And I think people will be impressed on what's being built in Canada from all across the country too. There's some cool things happening.
Okay. So let's back up the truck. And I know in our green room conversation you said cohort like about 17 times.
Yes, right. Lots of
I'm
buzzwords.
not that familiar with the word. Obviously there's a lot of insider jargon, but to the layman, explain physically what happens if your startup going through the chute. Farmers will understand the chute from an animal perspective. Yeah. Okay, you're in the chute. You're getting shot out into the corral. What is going on here?
Yeah. So the Cultivator chute is basically the value prop, and how it all works is companies apply. So you apply to the program. We've got a good, selection committee, lots of eyes on that. And so for our ag tech program, that's the EMERTECH investment team. So they're looking at it from just, scalability, the problem, market, et cetera. Quality of teams really big. What's the commitment level and the compelling reason why these individuals are qualified to solve that problem, which is really big. So they get accepted in, and basically we provide 3 months of jam-packed programming. And the cohort mentality is really just kind of like a class or a team. And the idea is that you've got these, founders, or really the CEOs of the organizations together. So you got that group shared experience. So not only are you learning the content, whether it be really diving into like cap table management of like the equity of the company, and, how to do that effectively, and mostly how to avoid some of the big mistakes that hurt companies. Sometimes it's great companies, but it's the legal or the accounting that prevents this innovation from getting to market. And so you go through those different programming components, but you've got that shared experience. So you're also chatting with other individuals who are building really interesting things and experiencing the highs and lows of, are we going to make payroll next month? Like, we got 6 months of runway, or the highs of, hey, we just broke into Brazil and Australia. Like, this is going global. Oh my God. I'm managing 2 people who are my, maybe my friends or my peers, or were crazy enough to join this ride. And now I got 20 FTEs or 30 FTEs and a pretty big payroll and some high stakes stuff. So that cohort is really like, a lot of the secret sauce is the magic between the peers. And then we make sure we bring in, world-class mentors from around North America and beyond to talk to the, the folks in executive leadership or sales, or marketing is a big one. A lot of great people building great products, but being able to market it and tell the story is often lacking. And then further, how do you sell? And, in the ag tech space, what's the seasonality, as you would know, the seasonality of sales, right? There's some key windows and times when those windows aren't as open. So it's, a different sales cycle than a lot of places.
Oh, timing is so huge in sales. And I was just thinking about, timing and being a startup. And I feel for those companies that have a brilliant idea, but it's just ahead of its time. And you can try and force it, but I think until the market is ready. I'm just trying to get some perspective too. This is a relatively new concept. Where have you seen companies come in and go through in their lifespan? Like, you're so early on. Have you had any sort of entrepreneurial life cycle successes? It can happen fast, but often it's maybe, multiple years it takes to complete, sell the company or whatever their end goal is.
Totally. So we've just completed 3 years of programming, industry agnostic. So there's some ag tech companies in there, but our general stuff. So from a cultivator perspective, we've seen some really interesting things. So, companies surpassing 1 million in annual recurring revenue, or a monster capital raise of, kind of multi-million-dollar round is sort of what gets you to the graduation component for us. And we're seeing companies based on the Canadian prairies here that are, selling their software to, the city of New York is a big customer. So think about like a MyComply, things like that. And then on the ag tech front, what's been really interesting, we've done our beta program, and, fortunate to work with individuals like Corey Wellness at Swap Maps there. And they're doing some, some really impressive stuff and have great traction. Brad, you mentioned Dan McCann from Precision, and obviously the real ambitious and pretty cool, future that he's imagining in agriculture, and the way they've been able to gather that funding is super impressive. So, we're fairly early in the ag tech game, but what I'd say is the companies that are applying, they really vary. We're seeing companies that have significant revenue and traction and geographical reach, as well as some that are pretty early stage and working with first few customers. But that's kind of the nice, back to that cohort mix. You kind of want a nice mixture of a few people that are ahead or behind, and kind of have your like seniors and your rookies and your mentorship built in. So
huge. I mean, I would estimate a lot of those people that go through the program probably feel maybe half the value would come from just mixing it up with other entrepreneurs that have been there, done that. Obviously, for a lot of those folks, it wouldn't be their first kick at the can. I'm wondering about the transformation before and after. What do you see people going through this program?
Yeah, so I think like what we can, we're about to kick off here with the ag tech cohort specifically, but what we've seen a lot through the programming is just, I think like you mentioned before, the importance of talking to customers and talking to users. So some groups inherently built on that, but that's sort of fundamentally pounded into the curriculum for day one. And that's a huge thing of just how many groups can you talk to and learn as much as possible. And I think the important thing is the listening, not the talking. So I think it's one thing when you talk to a founder, they'll love to tell you, because they're so good at the pitch, they'll tell you exactly what they have, why it solves the problem. And they're really good at that, typically really good at selling. But what we want to encourage them to do is make sure they're listening to actually understand, like, what is Dan's pain point? How's he currently solving that problem? Right? Like, what are the alternatives? Where does he find his information? Where, just listening and trying to pull as much information before you pitch what your idea is. So it's kind of, the opposite of leading with your pitch saying, hey, this is what I do. This is how we solve your problem. And more just like, hey, what are your biggest problems on the farm? Or what are your biggest challenges, with X? And, how are you tracking this? Or is data useful to you? Or where do you source that from? Like, what are your top 5, software applications? Any of those things that are just open-ended. So I think that's one of the biggest transformations, is how they position and tell their story. And then also, we just want to make sure there's so much info out there. Access to information is not the issue, but how can we funnel it to them so that they're aware of like the best supports to help them grow, and also what's relevant at each stage. I want to make sure founders that are at X stage aren't worried about, these types of protocols and operations and, things they need to do that are probably 24 to 36 months away. It's kind of like, don't get too far ahead of yourself, like do this specific thing. And then others that are at the later stage, how do we make sure that they are now addressing the things that become pain points of, hey, when do we need to bring on a CFO? When do we need to bring on other teams? Or how are we attracting top technical talent? Because we need 10 software developers or, some hardware people to build out that sensor and whatever that looks like.
Well, I was really impressed, speaking to you earlier about everything that you guys do, because often a founder has a very specific set of talents that are extreme in that segment. Like, you take that slice, they're the best in the world at that. But that's a very different thing than running a company at all these different stages. And a company at different stages is kind of like a child on its way to, manhood or womanhood, like needs very specific things that are, you only sort of become aware of well after the fact, like, oh, That's what they needed at that point. How are you backfilling all those things with founders that are almost, lots of them are eccentric in their genius, right? They're so good at something, they almost are maybe even odd to the rest of the world, right? Their talents are so strong and so specific. How do you backfill for all the stuff they need to be doing?
Yeah, it's a great point. Like we see that like industry specific founder or that technical specific founder or that more like business minded founder or that, kind of mix. And sometimes you see the founding team, right? It's three co-founders and they've gone on that together. But I think for us is really anything we can do to help them with the self-awareness piece of recognizing those gaps is good. So how do they do a bit of a self-assessment to realize, and usually things work so fast and, with high growth ag tech companies that they're going to find out pretty quick where their gaps are, because the timelines are always accelerated. So trying to find the gaps, knowing what you're good at, knowing what you're not, and then filling around that. So, I think the big thing for us is realizing that, we have a CFO in residence program, a legal in residence program, marketing in residence program, even mindfulness in residence. It's a lonely ship, right? These founders, sometimes you have a team challenge and you can't talk to your team about it, or spouse, partner, whatever that looks like. So just making sure that they've got some of that support and that peer-to-peer, like, hey, this seems like an earth-shattering problem I'm dealing with. Like, can you help me walk through this? Have you done this? So the peer network's really big. And then, like we mentioned, some of that executive coaching piece of helping them change their mindset from founder to CEO over time as that company matures. And I think the biggest thing is it's really, and I know this was a recent episode for you guys, but the growth mindset, right? Like who you are when you start the business and who you'll be at the peak of the business, is likely an evolved person. So it's less about what you know coming in and more about your willingness to learn and grow. As you like fire your first employee or have to have that difficult, you lose your first enterprise or massive sale and revenue dips. Like, how do you respond when you kind of get the Mike Tyson punch in the face and reality hits? So it's really like the resiliency and the it's kind of the velocity of learning, I think, is, just being able to learn and iterate. So that's probably the biggest, success factor.
Man, just having the ability to afford to make those mistakes without them being fatal, because it seems like a lot of founders need to touch the hot stove. At least that's been me. And it would be great if you could take somebody else's experience and instantly translate it to action. But until you sort of know for yourself, you might not believe it, even as some of us are close to 40, not 20. But I can't imagine the influence and the power of some of the mentorship and the leadership that you brought in. You were talking about, do you have some highlights of who you brought in that shared really profound things that made a difference for your companies?
Yeah, totally. So just, I think from the, the general's perspective, just individuals like Max Schmeiser, he's the head of data science at Twitter. And, you can imagine the amount of data he's working with and how wild that is. And so you get an individual's perspective like that coming from a background at Amazon and other places. He's a prairie guy, grew up, out in Saskatchewan here and now out in Seattle. And just, the perspective that he can bring back to founders is, has been really impressive. So we try to bring people all over, like, who locally does things really, really well, across Canada. What does that look like? And then also outside. Further thing I think is, we were mentioning just some of the opportunities that we see in ag specifically and in the ag tech space, bringing in farmers at various stages, some that are maybe the early adopters. And, Christian Hebert had some great, with Hebert Green Ventures there, had some great insights for founders there, as well as maybe farmers or, producers that are a little bit more maybe hesitant or, they're going to be maybe not your early majority, but maybe a laggard in terms of the timeline of when they're looking to adopt, new innovative things, just based on maybe a risk or appetite perspective. And then, individuals like Kyle Folk here and his learnings from BinSense have been awesome. So we're, try to pull people of like, who's built an ag tech company and taken it to scale, and what does that look like, and what have their learnings been, and then who've built other types of companies that are applicable from a unique perspective. Maybe they're, world class on customer acquisition or design, right? Making everybody expects products to be beautifully designed now. There used to be like if it was direct to consumer, it had to look good, but if it was for like a business or it just needed to work, didn't need to look good. But yeah, I think now users are all spoiled.
Steve
Like every
Jobs.
UI, UX, and the user interface and how the app looks and flows or the software. We kind of expect it all to be beautifully designed, right? And as we should. So chatting with design mentors as well is always nice. So that's where we've built out our Ag Tech Advisory Council with individuals from across North America, just to make sure that they're getting really good insights from across, and can help ensure that the things that come out in the program are looking forward, and thinking about kind of where the puck's going, not where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm. Just to give the listener a bit of a scope, you were talking about being involved, and correct me if I'm wrong, clarify it. You're talking about being involved with some 80 plus companies and $60 million in the fund. Where is the money coming from? Who are these people? Is it literally like you pull back the curtain and there's like the Dragon's Den waiting to judge your pitch? Or what is that? Where is the money coming from, and what does the money want?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so the EMERTECH Fund, led by Sean O'Connor and Kyle Scott, is a $60 million ag tech venture capital fund, all focused on Canadian ag tech companies. So that's got kind of a mixture of producers, retailers, a lot of like boots to the ground, large scale farmers, etc. in there, as well as you're seeing agribusinesses like the Mosaics, the Viteras, etc. Into a whole collection of Canadian credit unions, Conexus, and many others from across Canada. And so really the goal there is like, how can they invest and support this? Obviously there's a monetary return anticipation of how does that investment grow, or can you 10x that fund, but kind of making sure it's win-win and aligned with the industry, so that if it is solving the problem, those individuals will likely directly benefit, and or the industry around them will benefit, because then maybe customers are able to to grow more, or farmers can run an even more profitable business, or whatever that looks like, save time, money, any of those types of things. So that's where on the fund side of things is the focus. And then in terms of the 80 plus companies that we've been fortunate to work with to date, we started our focus largely on Saskatchewan tech companies, but now with ag tech we're across the country, and now overseas with UK as well. But we saw 70 applications for our first cohort. We were a little shy on Atlantic Canada, so we'd love to connect with the folks way out there on the coast. But we're seeing innovation coming from all across, whether it be rural Manitoba, rural BC, Southwest Ontario, kind of all over the place, and lots in Alberta, lots here kind of from our backyard in Saskatchewan as well. So it's really nice to see it all come together.
Well, and I love that you guys are working with a certain volume of companies, because there must be patterns that emerge at the company level, at the founder level. I'm most curious in this conversation, I guess selfishly, what works for founders, what doesn't work, what makes these companies successful. Obviously, not everybody can be successful. There's no 13th place ribbons in business, right? You either get compensated by the market for the degree to which you bring value, or you don't. What are you seeing? What are you concluding? Like, does this give you superpower abilities? You could go out and start a company with all that wherewithal and knowledge and be very successful, or what's the secret sauce?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Dan. Like what we're seeing is probably, some like commonalities, I think, is that, that velocity of learning is pretty big. So the founder's ability to grow and evolve is going to be big. I think if they're pretty fixed where they are today, markets and technology and industries just change so rapidly that I think if you're not, if you're not showing that, that coachability, even, you think about like with the willingness to learn from, say, other founders who've kind of been there, done that, or, receive that mentorship from individuals who've got subject matter expertise is really big. I think then that, another piece is, again, just knowing your gaps, like we said, right? Are you sort of more the business minded? Or are you the industry, focused? Maybe it's that ag tech founder that's, directly boots on the ground, boots in the dirt on the farm, knows it super, super well, but can supplement themselves with a technology person that's a little bit more in the weeds on, say, the hardware or software development. but building it to solve, the problem that you're well aware of. And one thing I think that's, often overlooked, but you mentioned it actually earlier, which is timing. Like sometimes it's just as much as timing. You're either like, and this is when we have to watch when we see company applications come in that we're not always, like just because you'll see common ideas come through, and sometimes it was just 2 years too early. But in 2 years, you have to remember not to discriminate against that idea just because it didn't work 2 years ago, but now might be the time. You think about like Mark Zuckerberg with Facebook. I'm sure, people tried social networks before, but the time, sometimes the timing is that X factor, and willingness to talk to customers, talk to users, and get out in the industry is going to be one of the biggest things. And then also, can they raise capital and can they attract talent? So, inevitably people with wild and crazy ideas, you need to be able to sell, whether it's to customers or even to that employee who's going to leave their current job and their salary and their benefits to join you. And they got to believe in the vision, right? A lot of people, when they're signing up to join the team, they're believing in you. So your ability to, express that vision, because sometimes it's not always crystal clear, but to clarify it to everybody around you is going to be big, whether it's investors or team members or your customers.
It's so funny because I feel like so many founders, myself included, we want to pursue entrepreneurship on a personal level because you don't necessarily have the patience to work with somebody else. But then you get into it and you realize patience is a big, big part of business, whether it's, how long it's going to take to get to the market. Overnight successes have been playing in little, hole in the wall bars, for 10 years, honing their crafts before they become the Beatles, or, it's so much work to get there. And I feel like, all the reasons that we start a business, we end up in a totally different zip code because you're beholden to the bank and their shareholders and your customers. And there's in fact way more responsibilities than simply being an employee, which sort of looks like a breeze in hindsight. But yeah, I love that. I love that you're highlighting communication and feedback and patience and all that. Where are you seeing a gap between some of the biggest problems that could be solved? Nobody's stepping into that space there. Is it, do you get a sense like, geez, I wish there was more, the list of things here, maybe there's more, farm management focus or software and hardware, or supply chain traceability? Like, what area could we be doing better that nobody's really working on right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing across the board is just like probably just reducing the barrier to starting a company. I think if we can do that and make it easier for people with those ideas who identify that, whether it be, like you said, the traceability, whether it be farm management software, whether it be the world of IoT and, managing all of these, say, like equipment, devices, et cetera, that, are, how are the APIs interacting, and how's all the different technology? And we hear constantly the amount of, I don't want another app and another login code, and, the amount of different things I'm trying to manage, and
Right.
nothing talks to each other. But I think the biggest thing is, can we reduce the barrier to entry so that individuals who have innovative ideas, we make it easier for them to take a shot attempt and try to get in the arena in building it. So I think, the individuals who are driving the combine, the tractor, or wherever they are with the livestock, et cetera, they know the problems the best. So the more we can make it easier for them to start companies or explore that, I think that's going to be, super helpful. So for us, we're always thinking about how do we reduce the barrier to entry for somebody who's looking to kick off an ag tech company? And then what kind of information can we give them in advance, or experiences where they don't have to go all in on a massive capital investment, but can kind of do a quick low cost experiment to fail fast and be like, okay, that's good. Never going down that road. That's, it's not it. Or fail forward and pivot and be like, oh, okay, I thought this was, thought this was going to solve X problem, but it discovered this. Or quick validation, just be like, hey, we think you're on something here. It's probably worth dabbling a little bit more. So we do an event called 24-Hour Startup Ag Tech, kind of for that reason, is we want to bring together, farmers, developers, data scientists, designers, business-minded folks, just to build something in 24 hours and get that experience of it's the art of the possible, what is possible. And so I think when you get somebody and they got 4 software developers pulling an all-nighter kind of working for them and trying to build something for them, it's kind of an invigorating to be like, oh, okay, so like if we did actually have the resources, not so crazy to think that this problem I've identified could be solved. And hey, a lot of people globally probably have this problem, so this could be scalable. So I think that reduction of barriers is a big focus.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I could see how what you guys are doing would have a big impact on that. And I'm not sure exactly what the statistics are, but I know it's extremely low probability of actually making it as a startup, like shockingly low. Like, why would you even bother? But I would be interested in knowing as a percentage how you feel about companies that are plotting your course through the cohort. How statistically safe are they once they've had your advantage?
Yeah, great question. I think like what we've seen is we've definitely been able to increase the success rate, decrease the fail rate. But for us, we don't want 100% success, because I think then we're probably doing something wrong, or we're not thinking big enough. We're not attracting ambitious enough companies. So I think inevitably we want to see a fail rate, because things are just going to change. A large tech company is just they're going to pivot and they're going to do something, or the industry is going to change, or, if you think in the ag tech space, right? Like, so maybe one of the major players is decided to do more of something or less of something, which, is kind of wipes out your need, or maybe a new practice is adopted, and that changes things. So we always want to have that fail rate. But I think the biggest thing for us is we want to make sure it's not a preventable mistake. So we hate to see a company fail because of a legal issue that could have been prevented, because of a cap table issue that could have been prevented, where, they maybe just weren't aware yet, and they got offered some cash for 50% of the business, and it kind of sounded pretty good to start, but then they realized how globally successful it could be. And now they got, somebody that owns 50%. That's actually like a steal of it. It was almost robbery to start, and so that's kind of, some of those challenging issues, or, poor financial management issues, those things where, the reason a company fails should be just that, they determine that the problem no longer needs to be solved, or a different company pivoted. So maybe Amazon did something that now covers it. So for us, it's, how do we make sure they've just got the best advice, the best support systems, and then we're still going to see a fail rate. But, we've seen that greatly increase. And what we've seen it greatly increase is, all businesses need revenue to succeed. So our goal is always, how do we create revenue generating businesses, right? That are, that customers enjoy the product and they want to continue to come back. They don't, use the terminology churn. It's like the loss of a customer. So you have a regular recurring customer. You want to lower that churn rate, or figure out what customer success can do to keep them. So yeah, it's any of the preventable mistakes, which is, where a lot happen, right? It's a relationship of people, two co-founders, and inevitably sometimes relationships don't work out, right? So how can you help them build a strong foundation? And those are the areas I think where we see our ability to increase that success rate, and which has worked really well for us.
Fantastic service and value being offered. I can't imagine, and be a very exciting thing to be a part of. I'm thinking about all the producers and industry folk, and maybe even investors that might listen to the show. They might be wondering, well, how do I participate in this? Because it sounds really interesting. Like, how do you get involved?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, big thing for us, we got a little project we're calling the Million Acres Project. And the original goal was, how could we connect with individuals from across the country, or, beyond just Canada, that, represent beyond sort of 1 million acres of farmland. And really the idea was that we wanted the voice of farmers, producers, and, based on the livestock uptake too, any of the ranchers that are listed in there as well. But our, opportunity is to reach out, and I can share the contact stuff. But what we want to do is, make it so that every time we have a cohort, these individuals can get connected with them for, small time commitment. Maybe it's 2 to 4 hours over the course of, the 3-month period. Give a little bit of insight or input, or see what's happening, and, both learn and share and teach, and then make sure that we can, can further connect that. So no obligation to be a customer, test the product by any means. We just want the insights of, maybe that farmer who's super tech forward or maybe a little bit more reluctant. And somebody, like you said, we want as many BS meters as possible. So if people are ready to determine whether that's actually a problem or not, love hearing that. So we're looking to connect with folks so that they can, connect with us a few different times with the cohort of founders, give their insights. And then we also want to make sure that, we're highlighting them and doing anything we can to connect them with stuff as it comes through that may be useful. So it's called the Million Acres Project. And like I mentioned, we're looking for farmers, ranchers, and, even retailers and others. And, people can check it out, cultivator.ca/agtech, or just reach out to agtech@cultivator.ca. And one of the fine folks on our team will get connected. We're just kind of bringing it to life. So there's not too much information online yet, but it's happening behind the scenes.
And the when of this cohort is about a month from when the show is going to come out, which is mid-February. So later March, that's when the when of it is.
Yeah. So we'll run March, April, May, and then we'll finish with a demo day at Canada's Farm Show in Regina in June. So good opportunity to kind of consider that. And then we're hoping that these companies will be on the ag circuit across Canada, whether it's the Manitoba Ag Days, the Ag in Motion, Canada's Outdoor Farm Show, all those great shows and more industry specific shows across the country. So hopefully once we unveil the cohort, you'll get to see them at a place near you, wherever you're listening from. So
I'm just listening to you and thinking of the incredible value that you're providing to the universe. And I was wondering if you could somehow find a way to put all these companies on some sort of mind map or a big cork board and chart their progress that you're helping facilitate. And really, I mean, the amount of heartache that's in forming most businesses and getting them to, complete the entrepreneurial life cycle it's so visceral. Like, it's probably one of the toughest things that you'll ever do. Entrepreneurship is so unique and so challenging, but just having a network, a support group, the resources that you guys are providing, the money, it's not just always money. I think we're kind of awash in money in some ways, but it's that softer side of value systems to understand how to be self-aware and avoid the pitfalls and work with people and protect your mental health and your confidence as an entrepreneur. As soon as your confidence is down, you're out of the game. That's a real danger for businesses. So I think it's fantastic what you guys are doing. I'm looking forward to seeing more of it and being a part of it in some way if we can contribute. Having you on the show is a big honor. Like, there's so many connections. We were talking about IntelliCulture and Precision AI and Lucent Biosciences. We're very, very close to some of those companies. So good on you, man. Congratulations. It's super exciting. And I guess we could leave off the show with, if you had any message for a founder that might be listening, that's wondering about their future course, what would you have to say to them?
Yeah, totally. Well, and thanks to you, Dan. Love the work that you and the whole Aberhart operation are doing, and really appreciate connecting with Terry there in the beta cohort, as we mentioned. And yeah, I think lots of ways to connect here, which will be awesome. But probably the biggest thing for us is that we're just happy to support, right? I think it's, at the end of the day, it's the founder who's the one in the arena, and we're just we're happy to just make sure they got the as many tools as we can beef up their toolkit with. So a huge amount of respect to those that take the leap and to do it, and individuals like yourself that take that on. And I'd say, like, the advice that I would have to anybody with an idea or a potential founder is just talk to potential customers, right? Start to listen and see. That's the best spot. Like you said, the check writer, like whoever's going to be paying for the potential thing at the end of the day, that's where you want to start. And further, don't be afraid to do some experiments. You don't have to go all in. You don't have to quit a bunch of stuff to try. You can do small iterative experiments just to see if it's worth taking the next step. And treat it like a scientist and do those iterative experiments. And then obviously we want to chat with you here at Cultivator, so don't be afraid to reach out as well. But yeah, that'd be the advice to start.
What's the best way to reach you, Jordan?
Yeah, best way for me is right now, if anybody's interested, just reach out to agtech@cultivator.ca. or social media. We're active, both Cultivator SK, those are the Cultivator accounts across like, Twitter, Instagram and Facebook, things like that. We're on LinkedIn. And then me personally, feel free as well. Jordan McFarlen on most of the common socials. My Twitter, Instagram is McFarleJoe there as well. So I can make sure to provide those links. But yeah, we're happy to reach out in whatever form people prefer to connect. I know we've connected a bit in the direct messages too. And sometimes that's more effective than an email as well. So
it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's amazing who you can reach out to. And looks like you're having fun. I think you're a good follow because it's incredibly inspiring and uplifting. And I guess last quick question, you're kind of, a cheerleader and a coach and all that good stuff. But if you were to be a founder, what would you be founder of?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Yeah, I feel like I get the front lines, so I'm a little bit tainted because I get to see so many of these cool things that people are doing, and especially I'd say right now, like what's just so cool is that the ag industry is such an impressive space on what farmers are doing and everybody else there. It's great to see that there's even more innovation and exciting things coming, but it's just built on such a history of impressive innovations that, I think in that space for me, it's really like, I'm just trying to learn as much as possible right now. So I don't think I would, I don't think I have a great idea as a founder right now, because I'm jaded to trying to, we're always trying to evaluate when they come in. So we're just like, you're trying to inevitably support, but also poke holes in ideas too. So I have like a kind of the skeptic evaluator mindset right now that I probably got to get out of. But yeah, I don't know. I think I gotta switch my mindsets.
You got to come up with a big idea, man.
Yeah, that's right.
I like the idea that you're a founder of founders. And like I say, I mean, think of the amount of companies that you're going to help move forward in the industry and the amount of value you're going to create. Probably creating the most value you possibly could, exactly where you are, brother.
No, thanks, Dan. I appreciate that.
It's exciting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to working with you guys more, and it's really inspiring. I need that entrepreneurial juice. Even it's really interesting too, as I see our company maturing, it's actually less entrepreneurial. So I sort of got to get my jam, talking to guys like you or working with other companies. We've had so many companies and people that have been so willing to help us out. I find the more successful people are generally, ironically, the more time they have and the more willingness they have to help out those that they would sort of deem worthy based on their attitude and their blood, sweat, and tears and equity. It's a crazy quotient because it's so intimidating. Some of these people that you consider, they wouldn't have time to take my call or whatever. Well, they're just people and they've already won at the money game. It's just a scoreboard. Some of the best return they get on the things that are really valuable, like relationships, is helping folks that they're excited about seeing their progress. That's been my experience, and I want to get to there where I can help others out.
Yeah, I see the exact same thing. It's kind of that give first mentality that's so powerful, and I think it gets ingrained in the next wave of founders, so they do it. So it's cool seeing the cycle of like,
Yep.
Somebody really went out of their way. They helped me. They showed me like, how to improve my sales cycle, or, talked me off the ledge when I was trying to do this with my company and that would have been a big mistake, and they saved me. So yeah, it's awesome. And yeah, we'd love to connect with you as much as possible. Dan, we got the cohort coming together here, and maybe some future podcast guests as well.
Oh yeah, that's rich, fertile ground for the podcast for sure. So I feel like we've opened up some brand new doors here, Pandora's box. So keep it real, brother. Proud of you. Really great to meet you and hear from you. I'm sure this episode will have its tendrils out and people be reaching out to you and learning more about what you're doing. And you're just getting started.
It is the start.
You're such a young guy. I mean, it could be a long-term thing of providing value to the market. And there's nothing greater than free markets, I think, to elevate humanity. Really and truly, especially with something as integral as agriculture, just all of our lives. So thanks a lot for coming on the show, my friend.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dan. Really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who listened today. Really appreciate that.
All right, man. Keep it real.